Doug Kramer, who will discuss Scientology mission creep. This is a follow-up on his previous talk. And he will be discussing about his brief experience being set up, conned into signing a 2.5-year contract to join Scientology staff at the Ventura mission in his early 20s and his subsequent escape. I'm thinking that 2.5 years is a lot shorter than the billion-year contract that most people seem to sign. Do you have a quick introduction before or statement before we start the video, Doug?
Yeah, sure. It's a brief. I have a long Scientology career. I was a Scientologist hardcore for about 15 years after growing up in it for 10 years as a kid, resisting it. So this thing that we're going to be talking about signing the 2.5-year contract was just another minor thorn in the side. It wasn't a huge incident because I ended up, spoiler alert, I ended up ditching the 2.5-year contract. But this is an example of what it's like being in the cult on pretty much a daily basis. Just the pressure and the kind of constant needing to join up with them to dedicate your life to clearing the planet.
Dave, do we have the video to show?
Physical labor, an intense ideological study used to break the subject's will, or is that the truth?
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the first episode of this new season, and we're going to be picking up the storyline from where we left off in the last episode called Scientology. And then at the end of this video, we'll talk briefly about what we're going to be covering on this season on the technical videos, as well as some upcoming news. So what this is going to be about is, for those that are following along, you know about the Ventura mission. That's where all this madness started. And that's where my dad first saw that ad in the newspaper when I was a kid that said Dianetics, learn how to handle, your communication problems better, or some shit like that. He went down to the Ventura mission, got into it in a single day, and brought the mind virus known as Scientology back to the family to spread it to all of us. So that's what we're going to be discussing today, because I've been wanting to get to the mission. It just didn't fit into the story until I get back out here to Los Angeles, because where we left off last time is I gave you a background on sort of the 3 different timelines on what we're going to be covering in the second season on the story part. And the first couple years involve coming down here to Los Angeles, living in a couple of shitty places, near and on Scientology property, going to the Beverly Hills Playhouse and taking acting classes, taking casting director workshops, and basically spending pretty much every day or thereabouts at the Celebrity Center taking courses. So after I'm out in Los Angeles for about 1.5 years, the mission where I did all of my training and auditing sucked me back in. And it is a trip I knew what we were going to be talking about today. It's a trip looking back at this whole thing because, like I've said before, I don't feel like a fucking Scientologist. I spent a lot of time reforming my belief system pretty much from the ground up. When I was in my 30s and I woke up, and we'll talk all about it when we get to that point, but when I actually woke up, it was in a single day. And ever since then, it's been a process of, it felt like in my 30s, I was a 6-year-old child. Think about your mind like it's a hard drive or a computer that stores all your belief systems, everything you believe in subconsciously, right? Well, one day it was like having that hard drive completely deleted. And the best way to describe it, because it was this really psychedelic experience that went on for year after year after year. But the way to describe it is basically having amnesia. I didn't really know who I was, where I was. I didn't know what the fuck happened to me. So it was a process of reassembling that whole belief system. And when I look back at this, we're going to be talking about the mission where I spent so much time going through this brainwashing, where I was a true believer, and I love these people at the mission, and I love Scientology, and I really love this technology that I thought I was learning. Even to this day, it's a trip that that shit wasn't what it seemed to be, because that's the power of brainwashing and the power of what we believe. And like I said before, if you can implant belief systems into a person's subconscious, which is really easy to do, but you don't know about that yourself, you might go through your entire life absolutely believing this is who you are, this is who I am, this is how I see things, and it could be totally, totally false. So, the reason we're talking about the mission now is because I spent a year and a half out in Los Angeles, thereabouts, and then I got pulled back to the mission via a guy named Bitchute. Before I talk about him, let me give you a little bit of background on the mission. This was a mission that was formed by Tom and Kathy Steiner, who I described in a previous video as two very interesting, ruthless hippies. They're kind of hard to describe in a couple words. They don't really fit any category. And one of the things that I remember too about the Scientology scene in general, especially the mission, is that, you know, they're just different people. Tom and Kathy Steiner, who were the mission holders, would have been unbelievable, like they would have been very productive people in the quote unquote real world, as would a lot of Scientologists, because it's a different world, and the pressure and the stress that's put on the public, let alone the Sea Org members and the mission holders like Tom and Kathy Steiner, the pressure they had on them to make money and to keep this facade going. I mean, they didn't think it was a facade, they believed in it. And again, we're back to the power of belief. When you believe in something on the level they did and I did and we did as Scientologists, you can do amazing things. And, you know, they manipulated the crap out of me, and particularly my parents. They got a lot of money out of them. And they took a lot of our lives, you know, our time, our minds. Obviously, they didn't know that they were doing that, nor did we know that we were being brainwashed. But I have mixed feelings when I look back at all these people at the Ventura mission as to what I thought then and how I kind of see them now. Okay, so with that brief background, this is what happened in this part of the story. I got roped back to the Ventura mission for an event that they were putting on over the weekend. I got conned in a very fucked up, sneaky way into signing a 2.5-year contract to join staff full-time, give up my fucking dream in Los Angeles that I just started. And I ended up having to make an escape a few weeks after that because it drove me fucking insane, which we're going to talk about. And then I head back to Los Angeles to continue on with the fucking original dream and plan that I had before these assholes sideswiped it. I've forgotten about a lot of this stuff because I've, you know, moved on with my life, and I never really thought I was like pissed about that. But, you know, when I look at all the obstacles that these people, you know, put in my life, I mean, it's hard enough like trying to make it as a fucking actor, you know. I talked earlier about some of the benefits that it had by feeling like you had a network that you could connect with, but at the same time, the price that I paid for that, there were so many obstacles because of Scientology that never would have been there, that my life, I realize now, would have been a hell of a lot easier. Because I feel fucking made it despite these motherfuckers. Because there was a couple of people that I'm remembering now at the Ventura mission that, with or without Scientology, they're fucking assholes. The majority of the people there and in Scientology in general are victims, but I've also realized it's a place where if you're a sociopath, it's a good place to hang out at and kind of have cover or protection or to act out your fantasies. And there was a couple people that really contributed to almost basically removing like... Anyways, let's get into it. So this guy, Mitch Talevi, he was a superstar of Scientology. He had literally done everything. OT8, all 3 L rundowns. Those are special rundowns that cost a shitload of money, and you have to go to Flag in Florida to do them. He did like the executive briefing course, which is this huge fucking course on executive management. And he did the St. Hill special briefing course, literally fucking everything. This guy was a superstar, and he was known in the Scientology world for doing fucking everything that L. Ron Hubbard released. So he was what's called a field staff member, which is an FSM. And that means that he made a lot of money by getting other people into Scientology. They give you 10% of whatever you... I'm sorry. I'm still fucked up from like just thinking about... Sometimes you don't expect shit to come up and I'm just doing a video or whatever, but I'm having trouble getting over being fucking pissed off about this. All right, let me take a moment. So I'm trying to collect my fucking thoughts, man. I knew this was going to be a tough video to do because just because it was going to bring back memories. And all right, let me see if I can get myself back together here and remember what the fuck I was talking about. You see why I fucking smoke during these videos. Long story short, Mitch Talevi was a superstar of the Scientology world, and he was a field staff member, and he would put on events all over probably the US, probably the world, trying to get people into Scientology. And his big hook was, hey, I'm a magical OT. I've done everything and that Scientology has to offer. And I was able to pay for it. The reason he was able to pay for it, which I never figured out, is because he's making all his fucking money. You get 10% of everything you sell. So he's making all his fucking money, which is how he's paying for the bridge. Plus you get special awards and stuff and free courses and shit. But in the Scientology world, this was a very special guy to go see. And he lived in and around LA, I believe, but I only got to see him a couple times in my Scientology career. So when the Ventura mission said, hey, we have this guy, Mitch Talevi, that's speaking at the Ventura mission, I went down there right away. Now, these motherfuckers, and by motherfuckers, again, man, some of these people are victims and some are just fucking psychopathic assholes. And I don't put Jim Hamry and some of these other people in that boat. Before I get off on all the characters and cast of characters that are at the Ventura mission, because there's several of them, before I get off track, let me just say that Tom and Kathy Steiner, Jim Hamry, who was the registrar, he was also known as the Hammer because he was so good at what he did. And real briefly about him, because I brought him up a couple times in the past, he died recently in the last couple years, I believe. And like a lot of Scientologists, I don't know the full story, but from what I've heard, he was kind of left out to dry. And I have a lot of sympathy for Jim Hamry, even though he fucked up my parents' life, because he was so good at what he did. He was such an expert registrar. He was so good at selling people. But he had a kind heart, and he was a massive victim because this guy worked his ass off and was under the mission holders, Tom and Kathy's thumb, to be as good as he was. Like I said, it's a totally different world. The kind of pressure and the miracles that people could pull off, and the kind of talent that somebody like Jim Hamry had, where he could sell water to a fucking Eskimo, and I would just melt into his reg cycles and just buy shit from him, because I could tell he had a good heart and he was a good guy beneath all of the brainwashing that he had been through, like we all had. So he was responsible, as well as Tom and Kathy Steiner and a couple other people, for setting up this ruse where there was a girl that I liked there who was attractive, and everybody probably liked her, and her name was Iris. And she, I would always see her at the mission and shit. And they obviously sussed that I liked her. And when I went down to this Mitch Talevi event and got blown out of my mind, listening to them talk about OT and how you can get up the bridge, it was a mind-blowing event. And you would often be ecstatic and go into what I was talking about before, a suggestible or hypnotized state, because you're so used to going into it through the TRs and all the training you do, that when you hear an electric speech like Mitch would give, I was in an ecstatic state, and they knew that. I also mentioned earlier, when you're doing courses, when you're doing your TRs, when you're doing your auditing, that's when they'll pull you out of, they'll try to get you right after that, because you're in the suggestible state, and get you into the registrar to sell a course to you, so you give them a lot of fucking money when you're in this goddamn hypnosis. So that's the state of mind that I was in when they put me in this room. I just went down there for the weekend, right? I wasn't planning on giving up my acting career. And they put Iris, like, let's say I'm here, and they put me in this room after this event when I'm blown out of my mind, and they're all standing in fucking front of me, and they've been trying to get me on staff and to get me to sign this fucking contract so many times, but I would always resist and tell them no, 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 no. And I was confident in being able to say no, because I never wanted to join staff, because I knew it fucking sucked and I knew what they went through. I also felt guilty too, because I wasn't saving the planet and I was selfishly trying to pursue my dreams, but still, they were never going to get me. But this particular night, man, because like I said, I resisted 100 fucking times. They always hit you up to join the Sea Org or staff or whatever. I always told them to go fuck themselves. But they had Iris sitting right within my eye line, beaming, and all these other people around me. There was like 4 or 5 staff members. Like I said, Jim was in there, the Steiners and shit, who, you know, I had a good relationship with all these people, and I trusted them. They were helping me up the bridge. They, you know, I had a bond with them. So after hours of them just coaxing me and getting me to sign this contract, don't you want to save the planet? And meanwhile, like I said, Iris is fucking sitting there like out of my eye line. This was all a setup. This is what they plan. This is what they, you know, this is what they do. And of course, I didn't realize this until not that long ago. You know, I mean, it takes a long time to, you know, realize all the little tricks and shit that they do. So anyways, after hours, I'm in this unbelievably ecstatic state. And it's so obvious now I was hypnotized, because they only had me in that state for a couple hours. And then when that hypnosis wore off, we'll talk about what happened after that, but it's so easy to see this shit now, man, because they just got me in that state of mind for a couple hours and took me to my breaking point where I was just like in love with saving the planet, in love with Iris, all this shit happening at the same time. And I finally said, I'll fucking do it. I really want to save the goddamn planet. You're right, I am fucking up by just doing my dreams. This is a much bigger purpose. Where do I sign? You know, when you're in that state like I'm describing, I knew that I didn't want to do that. But the power and the pull to do it, it's so hard to describe, because I know I knew I didn't really want to do it, but they had me during those couple hours. And I remember driving home that night, and I called my mom and I said, I joined staff. And they freaked out, because they're like, what are you doing? You're giving up your dream? Are you sure you want to do that? Like, they were hardcore, you need to be a Scientologist. But when it came to staff, and this is the same with a lot of people, that have kids that are Scientologists, they may not want them to join the Sea Org or staff because they themselves know how fucked up it is and they don't want their fucking kid in there. So my parents and my mother were, are you sure you want to do this? And I was just like in that state of mind for hours, for a few hours while I'm driving home. Same state that I had when I was done with the Pura, same state when I attested to finishing a grade. It's literally being hypnotized. You're in an ecstatic state of mind, and then it wears off after a few hours, a few days, or a week, and so you go back in to handle it again. This is the entire cycle of Scientology, while people think they're going spiritual. Anyways, so I said, yeah, Mom, I totally want to do this. You don't understand. I mean, I'm going to save the planet. I wasn't even thinking about Iris. Nothing ever happened anyways. We went out. When I finally, joined staff, we went out on a couple dates, not even dates. They were stupid. They were like, friendship kind of crap. It was a total setup to get me on staff. And then, Iris also was trapped there, and she was totally under the Steiner's thumb. She lived at their house. And she also was kind of like a hippie chick. There's a lot of hippie people in these cults, right? From fucking Manson to even the Nexium cult shit. They're all like kind of dreamers and hippies and shit. And Scientology has a lot of them, especially in the 50s and 60s. That was a big sell. So not to get off track, but Iris never happened. I'm stuck on staff. And after about a day, I started to question, what the fuck did I do? I just signed over 2.5 years of my life. I moved into the place where Jim Hamry and all these other people were staying, and it fucking sucked because there was a lot of people staying there. I totally was owned by Scientology. Like, you work long hours. Like, right away I was doing like a schedule where I'm like, I'm never going to be able to fucking do this. I had to call up friends while I was on staff and try to get them into the mission. I had to do all sorts of awkward shit where I'm like, dude, I'm not fucking down with this. And this went on for a couple weeks. And finally, because I was dying inside, I was losing my fucking mind because my subconscious realized, dude, you need to fucking get back to what you were doing. You need to get back to Los Angeles. What are you doing? And, I'm sitting there still in the state of mind thinking that I did the right thing. But now, again, the hypnosis is wearing off. So I'm like, what the fuck did I just do? And if anybody knows, any Scientologist knows, you're going to be in a lot of ethics trouble if you make a commitment like signing a staff contract, especially a Sea Org contract for 1 billion years. I only signed this for 2.5 years, but it's serious business. And if you renege on it, like I ended up doing after a few weeks, which was the whole cycle that we'll talk about here, they put you through fucking hell. So I only lasted a few weeks before I literally had a psychotic break. That's standard, by the way, all throughout a Scientologist's career, is to just be shocked and shocked and shocked, and to literally have mini psychotic breaks. So the basic routine was long hours, living with a bunch of people that are also staff members at the Ventura mission, but basically never being there. You're just there to sleep. And like I said, having to do the most awkward shit. They promise you, they'll say fucking anything to get you to sign that contract. And ex-staff members and ex-Sea Org will tell you that this is true. All the way up until the point that you sign that contract, anything that you're into, let's say you want to be an auditor, you want to train up to class 12, you want to get more auditing and move up the auditing side of the bridge, whatever the fuck you're into as a Scientologist, they'll promise you the world. They'll say, yeah, totally, we're gonna send you to flag and train you up to class 12. Oh, you want to get your auditing? We'll get you up to clear within 6 months or whatever, all free of charge, because now you're on staff, because they don't charge you for the services as long as you're on staff. You get everything for free, but then they have a freeloader's debt, which is what I got when you leave. Luckily, it wasn't that big, because the only courses that I had to do was the staff status courses, which is what every staff member takes before they join, which are boring as fuck. And it's just all this, technical garbage of how you're going to be a slave, for the next 2.5 years, or if you're a Sea Org member for 1 billion years. But it's basically the honeymoon phase, the love bombing, motherfucking Irish, throw in, the opposite sex there to fucking hook you in, whatever the fuck it takes. And then as soon as you fucking sign that contract, like everything that I was promised or whatever just went right out the window. And it's like, all right, scrub the fucking floors, call up all your fucking friends that know this is a cult and get them down here, get on the phone. I'm like, I don't want to call these fucking people. They think this place is crazy. Dude, I would get on the phone with some people, man, and just be like, dude, I know, that you think this is crazy, but I'm telling you, Scientology is really good. Can you come down here and just like check it out? Dude, I'd be like fucking shaking on the phone because I knew my friends thought I was insane. I believed in Scientology, but I wasn't into selling it to my, friends. And now all of a sudden I'm supposed to be in LA and I'm suddenly with these weirdos and I'm doing all sorts of staff shit, which I used to watch as a public, and now I'm actually that guy. And it's like, I never wanted to become this guy. I already knew that the staff were treated really shitty. Anyways, I last a few weeks, man, and finally I have a psychotic break. I get in my car and I drive down to the Ventura Beach for like a day or two, and I couldn't even think straight because I knew I was in deep shit. Because I just ditched staff. I didn't show up one day and I just drove off down to the beach to try to think. But I wasn't in my right state of mind because I didn't know what I was doing. The hypnosis was wearing off, so I was regretting the decision. And all I wanted to do was get back to LA. And I felt like I was dying inside because I gave up my dream and now I was trapped because you don't get off of, even though I only was there for a few weeks, it's not like, oh yeah, sorry you made the wrong decision. No. What happens is you get security checked. So they wouldn't let me go for a couple months. I was sitting there paying for auditing, security checks of all the things that I did wrong, overts and withholds is what they call it, that they were trying to find on me. Because from the standpoint of Scientology, if you sign a contract that's called blowing, which means leaving. That means the only reason that you left is because you did something wrong or you had evil intentions against the organization. So my auditor, his name was Wayne, and he was one of the best, by the way. He would always get awards and everything. If auditing was a real profession, he would be a master. Anyway, so Wayne was auditing me day after day after day, trying to find all my evil purposes and this and that. What it's really designed to do, what it's designed to do for every staff member, not just my particular situation, is get you to renege, to feel guilty. Oh, maybe I should. I kept telling Wayne, am I making the right decision? Maybe I am evil. Should I rejoin staff? I mean, I really want to go back out and pursue my dreams, but I'm just being selfish, right? Shouldn't I? I guess I'm making the wrong move. I had to fucking fight him and within myself in order to get out of there. It was such a fucking inner struggle because, again, Scientology plays massively on your guilt. So just day after day, while I'm doing messed work and scrubbing floors, and because I was a bad person during the day, I would have to wait, and they would kind of, make me wait a long time or a couple days to get an auditing session, because you have to get through this routing out form, which is the security check, in order to be in good standing as a Scientologist. And then you can go back to LA, Doug, and pursue your dreams. So I had to follow all the rules or they're going to declare me an SP. I'm going to lose my fucking family. So I don't have a choice. I have to go through this bullshit. And in the meantime, they're making me feel so guilty, and I'm going, whole track. That means into past lives to find out all the evil deeds that I did that made me make this decision to join staff and clear the planet. And all of a sudden I reneged a few weeks later. I mean, they couldn't just be like, hey man, sorry we manipulated you. And, we put this chick in there that you knew you'd like, and we basically, put you in there for 4 hours until you went into a trance state and just sort of in a dream, just like signed the contract. We fucked you. That's not how it works, obviously. It's your problem. Anything you do to blow or leave is your fault. And I had to pay for all the fucking auditing in order to be in good standing and go back to Los Angeles. So that's what happened, man. My parents are kind of disappointed. It created this whole fucking guilt, even when I finally did get back there. Another thing that I want to say before we kind of wrap this up, this part is I came to find out later after doing this channel through a source that's reliable that the Steiners, my parents, my dad in particular, because as he got into Scientology, he started to do better and better. They were making all his business decisions and everything for him. And if you let Scientology do that, you might, for a little while, actually start to do well. There's a catch to that, but it's not uncommon for people to take to Scientology and then have their income go up for a while. Not least because they have a tendency to get involved in like scams and shit themselves before it catches up with them. That's not my dad's situation, but he started to, make more and more money as he was doing Scientology. So, and he's already a capable guy and shit. So he was always, I found out, at the top of the Steiners list. They would have these ruthless registration cycles where they get all the staff members together to decide and make a list of the top 10 people with the most fucking money that they're going to try to squeeze out that week. They were a fucking money-making machine. Not just the Ventura mission, which was a top money-making machine, but the missions in general back in the day before they were mostly disbanded by Miscavige were money-making machines. So they were absolutely fucking ruthless on going after the top chiropractor that they had. My dad, this and that. And like I said, I found out from this source that my dad was always at the top of that fucking list every week, which he wouldn't know anything about. And even if, let's say he was able to find out, or I told him, he would justify it and say, yeah, well, Scientology helped me. I don't have a problem with that. That's the kind of mindset that it is. So anyways, I never really recovered from that in my Scientology career. It's a bad mark on your record when you're, when I was trying to go up to the OT levels, for example, which we're going to cover in towards the end of this season, that would always come up as, oh, so you were on staff, but you blew. And then all of a sudden there'd be thousands of more dollars to pay for a security check to fix this like 1,000 times. So you get a record in Scientology, a criminal record that never leaves you. So there you go. That was my brief experience on staff that I then carried with me as a wound in my future Scientology career. But thankfully, it took about 1,005 wounds to get out. So in a weird way, the more Scientology was crushing me, that would determine when I got out. Because I said in a few videos back, this trap is so powerful, the hypnosis that you don't know you're under, to put it in a sentence, is so powerful and so unconscious that once you get caught by it, unless something drastic happens in your life or something smashes you over the head, there's a very good chance you're going to spend the rest of your life in it. Okay, my friends, when we pick up the story next time, we're going to be heading back to Los Angeles, and I wish I could say that was the worst of it, but that's only the beginning of this fucking story, unfortunately. So when we pick up the technical training films, just to give you a quick idea of that for this second season, like I said before, we're going to be going deep into this, and part of that is going to be going back to Scientology's roots, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, where we can discover put this thing in context, because, there's Scientology, but then there's all the elements surrounding it. And also, I mentioned before, there's nothing new under the sun. So mind control, and the shit we're talking about has been around forever, since known human history. But we don't need to go back into ancient history necessarily to pick up the story and to put Scientology in its proper context so the shit will make sense. So another thing that I mentioned is that I might start interviewing people. I mentioned that in the last video, and I do have an interview lined up with a guy that I'm super stoked to talk to, because he was there's like hundreds, if not fucking thousands of like people, book or authors, people on YouTube, fucking articles, just endless people that I just got knowledge from who will never know about me just because I was online or reading books, just trying to reprogram my mind. And this guy is one of them. His name is H.G. Tudor, and some of you out there might actually know who he is. If you've ever been in an abusive relationship, a narcissist, a psychopath, or a sociopath, and you probably ran across this guy's info. If not, I'll tell you about it more when we actually do the interview. This is my first attempt at an interview, so hopefully, it'll actually happen and I won't fuck it up. But I'm super stoked to talk to this guy. And I just wanted to let you know that in the future, hopefully, the reason I'm bringing him on and other people is because when we do the technical videos along with the storyline, I'm just trying to provide as much information as possible about how this whole thing works. And one of the key aspects, one of them, is to understand sociopaths and narcissists, not narcissism, but specifically narcissist. And this guy is kind of like the best. He is a self-professed and also he's been diagnosed as such, as a narcissistic psychopath. And I just want to bring as many interesting people on here as will come on to offer pieces of the puzzle that will put this whole thing together. Thanks for watching this, my friends. And until the next one, as always, stay safe, stay sane, stay well, and especially during these times, stay awake.
Before we get started, there is a question in the chat about like basically who these people are that
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that. Mitch Televi. I think it's spelled Televi. You can try Googling that. I'd like to know Mitch Televi's status myself. Tom and Kathy Steiner, you can Google. Tom Steiner, I believe, passed away recently. And Kathy Steiner, I recall, is working in Louisiana, I believe. I'm not positive about that, but she works at a Narconon facility. Narconon is a front group for Scientology that takes vulnerable people trying to get off drugs, charges them thousands and thousands of dollars, and then uses Scientology tools on them to try to suck them into the church. And they often, a lot of the times, they'll kill themselves and lose their lives going through that. So that's what she's doing. And what else? Would like to have a link. So yeah, you can find links to Tom and Kathy Steiner by Googling them. And then Mitch Televi, Televi is what he should be. And he should pop up because, like I said, he was a superstar in the Scientology world.
Do you have a link for like the Ventura mission, or
you could just type in the Ventura, briefly on the Ventura mission. So they, about a year ago, moved from where they were at when it was a little facility, and now they have a huge one that was a big grand opening that David Miscavige did, and it was a big deal because they don't really have a mission network anymore. For whatever reason, that was reinstated. And you can definitely Google that, and you'll see the big, beautiful picture of the new Ventura mission. And then I was looking at it online to research that video, and you can definitely find the mission that I went to. It's this shitty little rundown place that you can find pictures of online.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Kanita.
There was some point when you mentioned SP and losing your family. I was wondering what that was all about.
Okay, so if you are a Scientologist and you're born into a Scientology family, the deal is this. If you don't want to be a Scientologist yourself, be quiet about it. Don't talk about it, because, or you need to become one. And the reason is because anybody that speaks anything at all negatively about Scientology or L. Ron Hubbard or anything, even if you watch Leah Remini's show, you're considered an SP, which stands for suppressive person. You're indoctrinated pretty early on in Scientology, where to look at the outside world, like any cult, as they're evil. We call these people wogs. That's a really degrading word that I learned afterwards. But in Scientology, we were told that meant worthy Oriental gentlemen. That's an insulting way to say that all of you out there that aren't Scientologists are average people stuck with their reactive minds that are constantly being restimulated because you haven't handled this yet and gone up to the state of clear, which is what we're doing. And so everybody that's not a Scientologist and doing that, especially someone that talks negatively about mankind's greatest hope, is looked upon as someone that's evil. And it's another thing about cults is that it's black and white thinking. So that might sound ridiculous from the outside, but when you go through the indoctrination, specifically, they have a whole course called the PTS-SP course. And that's a heavy indoctrination course that teaches you how to hate the outside world and the reasons why people are bad for having reactive minds and not being Scientologists. And if you go through these indoctrination courses, you start to see things that way too. So even though I resisted Scientology for about 10 years, when my dad got into it as a child, I didn't like it and I knew something was wrong with it. I knew to shut the fuck up about it because I don't want to be declared a suppressive person as a kid and risk losing my family. That's how serious it is. And so when I said that I had to go through the routing out form at the mission, you have to do everything the way that they say you have to do it. If I said, I don't want to do this, let me just go back to LA. You don't control me. I can do whatever I want. It's not like that. I'm in a Scientology family. So we're all bonded and connected by this thing called Scientology. So we follow their rules first and foremost, and the family rules and what we want to do comes second. So you just know that as a kid. So I knew that I had to do whatever the hell they said and remain in good standing by going through their form, their routing out form, which is brutal. And then I'll get their permission to keep my family and then still be a Scientologist with that mark on my record. Does that answer the question, Kenita?
Yeah, I think that does. I feel like I need a dictionary or something to say, you know, these are all of the acronyms and terms that they use in Scientology so that you can decode the things they're saying.
Absolutely. We talked about that last time too. That's part of the mind control, to change the words. And they have a dictionary that's about that thick, 1,000, 1,500 words. Some of them have multiple definitions. And check it out. This is how it works, by the way, how you get those words in your head, because they're ridiculous, but it's part of reframing your reality through words. So when you're taking a course, let's say you do a communication course, you're going to start learning just by reading the course about, you have to look up words about, well, what does clear mean? What does pre-clear mean? In other words, in these courses, they're hitting you with Scientology words right away. So you have to go to their dictionary and start learning them. This is really complex, but I'll keep it simple because it's quite clever the way they kind of get you in innocently. When you're looking up these words over and over and you're learning the new Scientology words while you think you're just doing a communication course, for example, you're starting to learn how to think differently. And so after weeks and months go on, you start adopting these terms and it's impossible or becomes very difficult after a while to think outside of that. So that actually is done on purpose. So you do need a dictionary in order to understand this. It's a different world. You're going to have a different vocabulary after being in for a few years. And as I said, I think last time, one of the hardest things coming out of Scientology is learning how to speak the English language and how to redefine in English words everything that they teach you there. For example, the reactive mind is the subconscious mind. A suppressive person is a sociopath. Everything was changed to reframe your way of thinking, and that's part of keeping you in this mind prison and creating the mind prison.
Yeah, I actually read Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, a long time ago. And I went to one of their meetings and fortunately managed to escape because I didn't have any money.
That'll do it. Sign
up for anything.
They also take you too. If you don't have any money, they'll try to put you on staff or something. It's funny that you say that too, Kenita. Like I wouldn't have, I said this before, if I wouldn't have taken to Scientology if my family wasn't into it. If somebody had hit me up with a Dianetics book on the street, I would have no interest in it. And I would see it as gobbledygook and the crap that it is. But it was just because it was constantly put in front of me. Whenever I'd get in trouble, my parents would say, do you want to be punished for a few weeks, basically? Or do you want to just go take a course for a week because we think it'll help? So there was manipulation to kind of get me down there. And it was just being around it that eventually caused me to, because I didn't know anything about manipulation techniques or anything. So I just would think, okay, I'd rather just take the week on the course. I don't want to be punished for a month. So I knew it's bullshit. I can defend myself, whatever. I'll just get through it. I wasn't aware of the sophistication of Scientology's brainwashing. And an outsider, I think, has a hard time understanding that because I, too, would have rejected Dianetics. That book's ridiculous. It's stupid. And Scientology in general is. But if you're in and around it or you grow up in a family or it's constantly put in front of you, it's it's almost impossible to resist, because I was put in a position where I either have to shut up or go along with it. I can't say anything about it. I can't say what I really feel, or my family is at risk. So as a child, and then also you don't have any psychology formed yet, you don't really know kind of how life works. I felt like I was bound to get into it once my dad got into it. There was kind of no way out looking back at it, you know?
Well, with my particular family, I guess just me and mom, I was pre-programmed for self-doubt. So I was fertile ground for the kind of things they were selling.
You were pre-programmed to doubt yourself, or to have critical. Oh wow, how come? Like you're.
Well, my mother was an objectivist, so being critical is pretty much what you do, right? Just everything's got to be perfectly logical and so on. So any failing was, it was always me as opposed to something else. What did I do wrong? But I think I was fortunate to have friends who said, no, you don't want to do this. And, you can't afford this anyway, seriously. And, you just, I was lucky to get out when I did.
Yeah. Wow, you do sound primed for that, because that's what you just described. That's the mentality that, if you're always doubting yourself and cutting yourself down, that cults look for that vulnerability. Did your friends know anything about it? Did they try to talk about it and say, hey, it's a cult? Or did they just say, hey, why did they tell you didn't need it?
Right. I think that they didn't know anything about it, but they just, looking at it from the outside, they said, these guys are trying to scam you.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious just from that point of view. Yeah, totally. Good for you for not getting roped in, because it sounds like you could have at that particular point. And man, it's all downhill from there until you get out.
Okay. We got to move on to other people, but thanks, Kenny. Yeah. That was a good discussion. But I do want to point out, I've got my copy of Dianetics.
Put that right down.
I also want to point out to those people who don't know, like, it's not a small book. You can see how thick it is. Well, this does include, like, I think from this little mark here, that's the dictionary that they have with all their terms and stuff, specifically in Dianetics. I'm sure it doesn't cover everything, but
hello. Yeah.
Roy popped in. Okay, Roy was next.
Back in 1950, 51, I was on my way possibly to prison because I was a draft resistor. And I had some support group, and one of them said, there's a Scientologist agent or therapist that focuses on draft problems. And so I went to him, and first of all, he gave me the skin test, and I was very impressed with the needles and the metering and stuff. But he asked me, what's my background? I said, well, I just a few years ago graduated high school and got an honorary science award, and I was on my way to interested in math and physics and chemistry. And so what he did is said, I'll give you some bullet points here to honor and should help you, and you should be on your way. So he didn't fight me at all. So I watched some of the bullet points, which helped a little bit, and that was it. So I have had some Scientology experience. I eventually did go to prison for a year.
I'm sorry to hear that, man.
What year was that?
Hey, at least you avoided Scientology.
Yeah, 1952 is when I...
That's a long time before.
Yeah, right.
52.
Yeah, obviously Hubbard was still alive then.
That's 2 years after Dianetics came out, so that was right when the thing was firing off.
You bet.
Interesting story. Thank you, man.
Wow. All right. Marion?
Hey, Marion.
Yeah, hi. Hi again.
Yeah, hi
I have two questions not related to each other. The first one is, I was surprised when you mentioned Narconon, because, at least, I don't know if this is still true, but for many years, the courts would tell someone whose, crime had some link with alcoholism that they needed to take a course or join whatever, AA, particularly AA, not just rehab. At some point, I think it changed to, some sort of therapy. But anyway, I've always thought that Narconon was kind of the equivalent of AA, except, for non-alcoholic drug problems, however you want to put it. So I don't know if the court ever did or does say Narconon specifically, but I think lots and lots of people thought and think, as I do, that Narconon is a very neutral kind of, group.
Are you sure you're not thinking of Al-Anon? Al-Anon?
No, because that's for alcohol. And so there's the equivalent group called Narconon.
Okay.
So that's one question, if you happen to know if the courts, what. But the other one is, I was just wondering if now or recently, say like the last few years, the popularity of Scientology is growing or decreasing in the United States and then sort of in the world. Anyway, just do you have any idea of the, statistically, if it's growing or decreasing? And also maybe age groups related to, are young people flocking to it more? If you have any sort of age breakdown there. Okay.
Yeah. That's interesting. First off, what you say about the courts recommending Narconon, I think that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about that, to be honest with you. That was a little shocking to hear that, but I first dismissed it, but you might be right. Scientology does have their web in with politics and everything. They're like a virus that kind of manipulates and gets blackmail material on people. That's how they got their tax exempt status, by the way, by blackmailing the IRS. So that's what they do. So I'm sure that they actually do, Miriam, have Narconon recommended through the courts here and there. I'm sure that's happened, but I can't verify it. Also, the reason I said Al-Anon is because L. Ron Hubbard took the word Narconon, as he did all of his words, as a play off something that was already popular, right? So think about Coca-Cola. He would just grab a name and hook on to, he was always looking for ideas about how to sell shit. And so he would choose his words carefully. Scientology has the word science in it. That's a use of implication to make you think that it's something different than it is. So I know that that's all I have to say on that. Like, I thought you were talking about Al-Anon because I know there's AA, there's Al-Anon, and then there's Narconon. By the way, the fact that they still exist, because they have these facilities all over the world and they rope people in that need help the most. These are people that their parents paid $10,000. That's how much it costs to go send their kid and go fill out all the forms. We want to help our loved one. And what they do to these people, I mean, that's what I'm saying about our justice system. I feel like an alien in this world. I don't understand why this stuff isn't obvious and why they exist. Not just Scientology, but that's my experience. So it's really, they have endless deaths on their hands. They're clearly taking $10,000 and then using Scientology training routines and their technology on people. There has nothing to do with how to help them withdraw. They're going to go crazy, and they do. And with the amount of deaths, all somebody has to do is go, oh, I see they're using the training routines and this and that. They're not helping them withdraw. They're actually just hypnotizing them in Scientology, and then they're trying to get them to the org. So they'll go, a lot of people do, the people that do live through it and get brainwashed, they often they learn about Scientology, and so many people, recovering addicts from Narconon, have gone on to be staff members at Scientology orgs. So several of these people that you'll meet when you go to sign up for spiritual freedom at Scientology will be these kind of people. So the fact that it hasn't been shut down, there's been a lot of deaths in Narconon Arrowhead specifically recently, fairly recently in the last few years, that were high profile. And yet there's no warning. You can go on the website. Their website's out there. There's probably someone signing up their kid right now as we speak. And it's just, I can't believe this. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. And by the way, part of that, not to get too deep, Scientology, it almost, to answer your second question, it doesn't they are on the decline. They had 100,000 members at their peak at the end of the 80s. That was when they had the most members. Now, they'll tell you when you're in their Truman Show bubble that we had 10 to 12 million. That's how many people I thought that we had. And the reason you believe that is because as a Scientologist, you have to go to events every 6 months where David Miscavige puts on this 3-hour hoorah of all the different PR material about how we saved this person, we did this, we did that, and we have all these members. So in the Truman Show, it looks like you believe what you're told. It was a shock to find out that there's only 25,000 members left. However, it doesn't matter, actually. They could lose almost all of their members. That's not what it's about. It's about getting blackmail material and brainwashing celebrities who will influence the public. They have a lot of famous people, and they have a lot of that auditing is about getting blackmail material on people so that you can control them. So they run pretty damn deep in the web of society, and their membership is a front. All they need are the whales that they have. They have 50 whales, 100 whales. These are people like Craig Jensen, who have given them millions and millions of dollars. Grant Cardone, who's out there selling 10X, has given them millions and millions of dollars. They only need that to keep the thing going. And what it really is a front group to get material through the auditing sessions on powerful people in this world. So that's what it is. And everything else is window dressing. I just am finishing a video on this where I show that the rank and file members, people like me, we think we're going spiritually free. We think this auditing is the best thing since we think it's mind-blowing when you get disassociated and you feel like you met God and you're having all these revelations. You have no idea what this is really about. And like I said, all those people are just victims. They have no idea how the pyramid structure works. They have no idea the intelligence operations going on at the top. And they literally think they're just in a church.
Since you said that Scientology itself is on the decline a little bit,
definitely.
If there's some other groups that you might mention, even that have come to take its place, and just in terms of popularity and the same kind of a pyramid thing, I can't think of another particular one offhand. My guess is that there's many, but we don't know about them as much, or they're not as pervasive or whatever.
Yeah, actually, one of them that came to mind is I talked about, and the last time there was a book that was dropped off on my doorstep that snapped me out of Scientology, called Combating Cult Mind Control by Steve Hassan. He was a Moonie. The Moonies, for example, run just like Scientology. They, again, have a lot of people in their pockets. They have a shitload more membership and more money than Scientology. There's a lot of them, Miriam. I mean, they're all over the place. And that's the Scientology. The only thing that makes that thing a little bit different, I think, or a little bit more unique, is that their fair gaming, their blackmail, their ability to manipulate, to get people in their pockets is pretty extreme. So they're, I don't know how to explain it. They're just, maybe they have a little more desire to take over the world. We thought as Scientologists that we were going to take over the world and government. That's what we were encouraged. We were told we were doing, because we need to get government in line with Scientology policy, and we needed to get everybody clear and everything. So the people in there, the brainwashing, it might be the same for other cults. Every cult wants to spread their philosophy and make everybody like them. It's just Scientologists are super serious about it, and they have the tools to really go after it. And they've been very successful at doing that.
One thing that might help them, as opposed to the Moonies, there were Mooney meeting groups walking downtown Palo Alto last summer, and also settling in the main plaza and giving food out to people and dancing and so forth. So, very conspicuous, in other words. But is that I think Scientology might draw more people. I don't know about worldwide, but just because, people that consider themselves more rational,
right,
and don't consider themselves cult members. They're just, doing something to open up their minds, climb higher on even an intellectual or scale.
Exactly.
Whereas
That's how
it's like they are more conspicuously hippie, for lack of a better word. And
definitely. That's a good point too. That was the thing where I knew I wasn't in a cult, but everybody else was. The Moonies are ridiculous. Fucking, the children of God. How could you fall for that? They all look so ridiculous. And the thing why I knew I wasn't in a cult is exactly what you said. It's science. It's scientific. We were told there's a technology on how to handle things. You don't have to go to a religion or join the Moonies or any of this shit. This is a science of the mind. This guy figured out the mind. And by the way, I got to tell you, man, that's why we got to teach our children, I think, about some of this stuff, about our minds and about some of these tools of manipulation. Because if you don't, I didn't know anything about this. I don't think a lot of people do. If you've never been hypnotized and you've never had an auditing session and you've never gotten on those cans, which by the way, are putting an electric current through your body, which is all helping you to go to sleep and to go into the subconscious. If you've never had that kind of experience, I found it transcendent, like I told you last time. And this is very addicting. And this is what this is the main hook in Scientology. So it absolutely seems like a science. That e-meter is pretty impressive. It's a magic trick, but somebody else was saying right there, when you get on that thing, like they give you a pinch test, for example, they will pinch your body and then the goddamn needle will fall. And then what they say is recall the moment of that pinch, and you do, and the needle will fall exactly the same way. When I saw that, I was like, what the fuck? This obviously works. By the way, when you see that and you believe that, you then think you're learning a new technology, that it's legit. And then you have a blowout of your mind by going through their auditing, their repetitive questions over and over. It kind of breaks your mind. You disassociate, and they reframe disassociation as exteriorization. That's the goal in Scientology, to get outside of your body so you can remember the spiritual being that you are. So it seems scientific, Miriam, because you're seeing the meter do its thing. You then believe you have to tell all to the auditor. You have to unburden everything to be free. You can't have any, you have to tell everything so you can go up that bridge. They're very adamant about being ethical. So when you're in there and you go step by step, it really seems scientific. And like I said, all the other things were obviously cults, but never Scientology. And yet it is 100%.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to throw out that I think Nexium tried to be a replacement for Scientology, but then they got too sex culty and that
exactly
destroyed them.
You nailed that. Yeah, they definitely did try to be Scientology, but they threw in the sex cult shit. Oops.
Yeah. Okay, so we got Alex and Senna. I don't know which one of them is.
No, it's Alex. No, I had a question, but I also had a comment that your description of what they put you through when you told them you wanted to break the contract, it kind of reminds me of timeshare talks, And I know I'm very susceptible to a lot of sales techniques, but fortunately, I'm also very good at second questioning myself, having second thoughts and listening to them. What I was wondering about is you said they got the tax exempt by blackmailing the IRS. I assume you mean their former or perhaps present Scientologists in the IRS who they pressured. Do we know this for a fact?
Yeah, it's been documented. They filed about 2,200, maybe 2,100 lawsuits, separate lawsuits against IRS officials. This is the way it worked. Yeah. When you're being attacked, when Scientology is being attacked, this has happened many times. First of all, a little backstory. They had a tax bill and they needed to blackmail the IRS and get them to give them their religious status. Otherwise, they were going to go under the tax bill that they owe, because L. Ron Hubbard didn't pay his taxes. So by the time Miscavige took it over, they were in deep shit. So this was a do or die. And they're just, it would seem like it would be impossible, right? We're going to blackmail the IRS and get them to give us our religious status. This is what they do. They get all their membership, their hardcore fanatic membership, to maybe they have a lawyer that's a Scientologist. Maybe they have Scientologists in all these different professions. Long story short, they got their membership to file over 2,000 suits against the IRS officials themselves. And they also fair gamed some of them, meaning they do dirty tricks. They harassed them. They put so much pressure on these people just trying to do their job. I'm not saying I'm for the IRS, but these are people trying to do their job, and they're being harassed, fair game. They're being threatened. And This was covered in Going Clear briefly. If you want to check that out, this particular part. Basically, Fred Goldberg, who I believe was the, I don't remember what his status was in the IRS, but he talked to one of the Scientology officials one day in court and said, and Scientology said, look, if you give us our tax exempt status, these things will go away overnight. And Fred Goldberg said, are you serious? And I don't remember who he's talking to. You have to watch Going Clear to verify this. He said, yeah, so that's what happened. That's what they do. They put so much pressure. They make their lives such living hell that they finally said, fuck it. And then also they went through this whole, they didn't just give it to them right away. They have to put them through a whole process where Scientology has to show that they're for the benefit of the public and all that. Cause a religion, you know, it can't be making money. It has to be for the benefit of the public. If it's going to bring in any money, it has to go back out. So they did this whole scam and ruse where the IRS officials had to know it's bullshit, but they're being manipulated. And Scientology is giving them what they need, but it's all kind of, you know, shady. And yet they gave it to them simply because this is why people don't take on Scientology, because they would rather live a quiet life than take on this evil monster. So they take the path of least resistance. I think that's disgusting, by the way. And this gives you an example of how if you basically don't have integrity or you don't stand up for what's right, anybody can be manipulated in a position of power, which they're experts at, and cause everybody else to suffer from there on because they shouldn't have their tax exempt status. And think of all the lives that would have been saved if Fred Goldberg, for example, didn't give in. I'm not saying what they do is right, but this is what I'm talking about mutual benefits from each side, rather than someone saying, fuck you, we're gonna arrest Miscavige and we're gonna shut down this human trafficking and brainwashing operation. You know what I mean? I know it's not that simple. The laws are complex. I know nothing about the law. I just find it crazy that people give in and knowing the damage that they're going to cause by giving Scientology its tax exempt status. How do you sleep at night doing that?
Yeah. I understand that there's talk of Scientology being outlawed in, I think, Germany and maybe other European states. And there was a lot of kind of propagandists, I forget what the sources were, but arguing this was violation of religious freedom and so on. I don't know what happened with those suits.
I don't know the background to that. It is outlawed in certain countries. I couldn't begin to tell you which ones they are offhand, but that's what they do when they try, because countries have outlawed it and shut it down. And I don't have the solution to that. I don't know if that's a good idea to just tell people that they can't practice what they want to, but it's the abuses and what comes from people's beliefs that I think should matter and be looked at. They are outlawed and they cry religious freedom every time that that happens. They create a campaign or PR storm where they talk about how persecuted they are. Also in the US here, since they've been more and more attacked, they align with other religious groups and try to get them on their side so they could say, hey, you know, the Christians aren't being attacked for religious persecution and blah, blah, blah. Or in other words, they try to align themselves, or maybe they are, they try to align themselves with other religions and groups so that they could say, hey, we're also a religion, stop hurting us. They play the victim whenever you come after them. But they have been banned in places. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. Do you think they should ban what people believe in, or you know, who knows?
That's hard to do, but they should be able to ban an organization if, or members of the organization, if they've been implicated or it's been demonstrated that they've been harassing, blackmailing, intimidating people.
Exactly. That part should be addressed, and then let people believe whatever they want to believe.
That could fall on the organization itself. So whoever becomes president or Grand Dragon will be susceptible to lawsuits.
Right. And why Miscavige wouldn't be in prison right now is beyond me.
Yeah, you know? I don't think religion should have any special.
Me neither. That's such a good point that you make, by the way, Alex, because that's how they've been able to get away with their abuses. They simply claim that they're a religion And because of in the US, you can get away with so much shit that's outside of legality, that's completely illegal. And then when they get caught, you taken to prison, they say you have to go through our own arbitration system to handle this. They have their own, they're, like I said in the last video, they're like a world within a world, because they have their own way of doing things, including their own justice system. And when someone wants to put justice on Scientology, they just had a judge recently. There's this gal on Leah Remini's show, or that works with Leah Remini, who was trying to, get some justice. And they said, they passed it and said, you have to go through Scientology's arbitration because they're a religion. And the courts here don't want to take up, because we're back to that point about being, blackmail. They don't want to deal with it. They just say, okay, you're a religion, that's fine.
The Constitution, the amendment, one of the amendments says you can't pass a law respecting an establishment of religion. That's not quite the same as saying you can't put burdens on them. And that apparently has not been interpreted that way. I think since the rise of communism, we decided that religion is on our side. We can use, the government decided they could use religious prejudice to support government behavior.
Yeah. It's all kind of intertwined in the same thing, isn't it? Why do we have such a thing as religious freedom that protects people that are abusing people and hiding under the guise of religion? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, one of the scandals with the Catholic Church was that when there were complaints of sexual abuse, the church's stand was that this should be handled by the church itself,
of course.
Not secular authorities.
Exactly what Scientology does, and then with all the cults and religions do, same thing. They always want to. I understand that. I mean, as a believer, I thought we were doing the right thing by handling it internally. The government was evil. All these people were evil. Let us just handle it ourselves. I didn't think that was anything. There was anything wrong with that at all when I was in the bubble. Outside of it, it looks insane.
I want to jump in real quick before we move on to the next question. But you were talking about the arbitrage thing, or arbitration. That actually has been like a big deal with corporations, because they're allowing corporations to force people into contracts that require arbitration if there's any issue. And I'm wondering if that's kind of like part of the unintended consequences is, Scientology can now use these exact same things that the corporations are using to take away people's rights,
Well, I know that L. Ron Hubbard studied very like a psychopath, studied how to use and manipulate the way that society is actually set up. So he knew that there were loopholes in the law, and he knew how to use the law to the advantage. He basically described it as the way that this justice system and the way kind of society is set up. It's easy to have it work for the criminal. And he would actually talk about this in his lectures, especially when you get up to the intelligence divisions at the top of their pyramid. This is the Office of Special Affairs, which Mike Rinder was the head of for 25 years. He did these kind of intelligence things. And that's when you learn the secret L. Ron Hubbard directives, where he talks about how easy it is to use the court system and the justice system to get rid of enemies and this and that, because it's set up for the criminal to get away with shit. I thought he was, I think he was right about that.
I worked for the IRS for 35 years. I was a tax auditor and a revenue agent. And I remember when they said Scientology was a religion and let them go. And I was shocked. And I'm interested what you told us, that they sued a bunch of the employees to get them to let go. Because I remember I knew a little, I'd heard and I knew a little bit about Scientology, and I was shocked that they were letting them off, just calling themselves a religion. And in this country, there's a lot of idea that religion should be above the law. I remember as an IRS employee being shocked. I had no idea that they were suing everybody, and that's how they got away with it. So thank you for that information.
Yeah, no problem.